The SEC title game is set in Atlanta. You got Georgia, no surprise there. Then you got LSU in their first season under Brian Kelly, set to try and take down the big dog. Georgia, obviously defending national champions, favored by 17.5. That number is maybe a little bit surprising, but I guess LSU did lose Texas A&M. For Georgia, they didn't win the SEC a season ago. Like, you talk about motivation a lot for teams like Georgia because they don't get a ton of resistance week in and week out just for how dominant they are. But I promise you, they're locked in for this one because they want to go ahead and get that SEC crown back. Of course, they're still trying to win the national championship and repeat and all that, but they feel like they're the best team in the SEC. They feel like they were the best team in the SEC a season ago. So they're trying to take back what they believe is theirs. Now for LSU, like we already alluded to, they had some college football playoff hopes a week ago, got those dashed by Texas A&M, so they're trying to get back on track. I feel as though maybe LSU is a little bit more dangerous than they could have been a week ago because now the pressure to win, this game and get to the college football playoff, that's dialed down a little bit, and I think that's really healthy for a young team experience-wise. Because like I said, it's only year one under Brian Kelly. They're still trying to get their feet, trying to get their culture all settled down. I think this is going to be a really good game. Like, Georgia is obviously the favorite, like I already mentioned, but this is going to be a really good game because of what LSU has and the pressure that they don't have in this game. Really quickly, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, we'd love to have you. A lot of the LSU faithful, a lot of the Georgia faithful already joined the party. If you haven't yet, jump on in. The water's fine. The way that we break down these games is hinge points, meaning there's a variable sitting on a fence, right? Whichever way it falls, whether it's towards Georgia or towards LSU, we think it's a key point that whichever way it falls, it favors that team. So that's how we do it on this program. If you're new, thank you. If you've already joined us before and subscribed, we're glad to have you. One of the big hinge points for me in this game, what happens on third down, especially when LSU has the football? Because looking at the numbers, LSU is 48% conversion rate on third down. That's really good. Top 15 in the country. Now on the other side, Georgia, they're only allowing 28% defensively on third down. So they're top 5 in the country in that stat. So movable object, meet unstoppable force. That's going to dictate this game because for LSU to win this game, I believe they're going to have to extend drives. And so being able to convert on third down, that would allow them to then have a new fresh set of downs, obviously, take some more time off the clock. And for Georgia, if they're able to stop them on third down, if LSU has a bunch of 3 and outs, well, then guess what? LSU defense gets tired and potentially find yourselves in a hole in terms of just the margin of, whatever it is at the first quarter, second quarter. Like, you don't want to get down to Georgia 10 to 14 points. And LSU's done that before at different times this year, been able to recover, but Georgia's a whole different beast. You don't want to be down multiple possessions to Georgia. Now, if they can stay on the field and elongate drives, like I already said, that would very much be the kind of game that LSU would like to play. The tempo for them is crucial. And the game that I'm looking at to compare this style-wise is Alabama. LSU obviously had a huge upset win against Alabama. On third down, they were 5 for 12 that day. That has to be the kind of stat that I think LSU lives in on third down if they want to be able to beat Georgia. Okay, so that's crucial. Who has the most balance offensively? I think it's different for both programs, but for LSU, I think you need to be able to have a little bit of a seed of doubt for that Georgia defense in keeping the pass game alive. Now, what do I mean by that? I've said it before. I think LSU is one of the most dangerous teams in the country when they can run the football effectively. Why? Because they got guys like Keyshawn Butte, Mason Taylor, Malik Neighbors. Like, they got guys on the outside that can hurt you. And when you run the football effectively, more often than not, that means teams have to allocate more resources to stopping the run. We've seen it many times, especially against Alabama. Jaden Daniels, Josh Williams got after it in the run game, close to 200 yards that night as a team. As a result, you had some really key passes connect. So going back to kind of planting that seed of doubt, if you can connect on a couple of pass plays, it doesn't need to be a 300-yard game for Jaden Daniels. It's not his game, not the game that LSU needs to play. But if they can connect on a couple of those, and just to keep that box honest and not have Georgia overload it, that would be favoring LSU. Now, for Georgia, I think the conversation there is the balance is crucial for setting up a manageable down and distance. Because LSU, when they've been able to be successful defensively especially, they've been able to force high volume pass attempts. Look at the games that they beat top 10 teams in, Ole Miss and Alabama. Ole Miss, they're a running football team. They run it close to as much as an academy. I mean, they're like top 4 in the country in terms of how much they run the football. That game, though, they forced long third downs, obvious passing situations where Ole Miss had to throw the football. Jackson Dart threw it like 34 times that game. Same thing for Alabama. They weren't able to really get it going too much on the ground as much as they needed to and had a lot of longer third downs, and Bryce Young had like 50 attempts. So I'm not saying you're winning the game if that's the style of play that Georgia has to play, because they've thrown it like 35 times a game early in the year, starting to balance out a little bit more now. But if you can force them to have a higher volume attempt, that helps you. Because if Georgia can just hand the ball to Kenny McIntosh, hand the ball to Daijun Edwards, and just pick up 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, that chips away your defense. That is hard to do in the first half, but especially in that third and fourth quarter, that wears on a defense. As good as LSU is, I worry about them playing that kind of style of game. So if you can win on first and second down and be able to create those longer third downs and force it to be, okay, Stetson Bennett, again, the same narrative around Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett, can you beat us? That would be the way that you want to play if you're LSU. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm just saying that's the kind of reality that needs to be available for LSU. So here's the bottom line. I view this game very much as a boxing match. What's the score at half? What's the score a few rounds into this thing? Because for LSU, I think this game is very similar to how I viewed Ohio State, Michigan a week ago. Because remember, the whole conversation was, hey, can Ohio State at half at least, or excuse me, I'll rephrase that. The whole conversation was, can Ohio State stop Michigan's run game? And Ohio State did that. However, Michigan threw a bunch of haymakers in the pass game, and at half, they were very much, in it. They were ahead a little bit of Ohio State and had run for like 1 yard. For LSU, I think they need to kind of follow that blueprint that Michigan did. Can they throw some haymakers early? Because guess what? The second half from Georgia, it's going to be brutal. I mean, Georgia's one of the best second half teams in the country. Listen to this. Allowing 7 points a second half. So only a touchdown is what you're getting in the second half against Georgia. In terms of what they're scoring offensively, 19 points a second half. So they're going to get close to 3 touchdowns in the second half, meaning for LSU, you have to be able to do some damage early on. Can you land some early shots? Can you throw a couple punches and make Georgia off balance? That would be the world you would want to live in for LSU. So here's our prediction for this game. I think we see a really strong showing from LSU. We talked a lot last weekend about how LSU, does it disvalidate what they did in 2022 after they lost Texas A&M? No. Just a young team trying to find their footing, trying to get consistent. I think they rise to the occasion this game and play really, really solid. However, I think Georgia's extra focused. I think Georgia takes this game very personal, having not won the title a year ago. I think we see a second half surge from this program. I think it's close at half, but I think Georgia just continues to apply pressure. I think they lean on LSU. I think the team speed of this Georgia defense will make it hard in the second half for LSU to be able to create enough on the ground offensively. At the end of the day, I think Georgia ends up pulling away in this game and winning 34-20. So we're taking Georgia to win. We're taking LSU to cover in the SEC title game. So Georgia is your SEC champions. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.